Welcome to the Inheritance to Income podcast, where we talk about the real, raw, sometimes lonely journey of inheritance, how to plan for it, and how to walk through it with purpose. Today I'm joined by my friend, my OG, Greg Wimberley. We go back about as far as we can get, entire life. So I'm going to first start out letting Greg talk a little bit about Wimberley Electric and who he is, how long he's been doing what he's doing, and then we'll kind of jump into some questions.
Okay. Well, I've been in the electrical business, 35 years? I didn't sit down and add it up each day, but I've been doing it ever since. I kind of started, in with my dad in junior high school, and just kind of took it from there. I did go to college, so I did study management in college, so I kind of got an idea how to run things. But as far as learning how to do the electrical work and associations, I guess I learned that from my dad.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And your dad had been doing it a long time.
yeah, he been doing a. My cousin asked me the other day, when did he start? But I have it somewhere. I think he pretty much started doing electrical work when he got out of the military. He went to Hampton Institute, and then he came back and started doing electrical work. But he started his own business back in, oh, I'm gonna guess right now and say about the late 50s.
Yeah, I know we said the other day we were messing around, said it was when phone numbers were 4 digits.
It was 4 digits, yeah.
So we know.
Yeah.
We know that. So.
4082.
But you said you took management at North Carolina A&T, and you did a number of things. You worked in the business. I remember you working in the business when I was kind of doing stuff at Irving Swain Press, our family business. When did you first realize you were doing more than just stepping into the business, that you were really kind of stepping into your father and your family's legacy?
When did I don't think it's just something you realize. It just kind of happens.
Right.
I started off, like I said, cleaning the office, mopping a bucket. Did that for, just trying to make extra money. I always wanted to have money, and that was one way to get it, was go to work. And then eventually, he started letting me go out with the guys on the trucks and doing electrical work. And I guess I didn't realize that, I guess probably when I was a senior in high school, I realized this is probably what I'm going to be doing for a while. Because I remember my brother was doing it, and we actually worked together for a little while. But one little sparky circuit, and he ran out the door, and he never came back. So I knew it was over for him. So that's why I said, then I kind of said, hey, the sparks don't bother me. Just keep on doing it.
Yeah.
So that's what I kept doing. So I guess as I went through college, I kind of realized, this is what I was working towards, trying to learn enough to try to, basically, you always dream of taking the family business to the next level.
Right. So in that sense, you really kind of taking over the family business, managing the properties your family had. I mean, I was going to ask you, was that expected? But it seems like you expected it. Like that was part of the plan.
Well, I really didn't have to do a whole lot as far as managing the real estate properties.
Right.
I really didn't start that. I kind of got thrust in that. When my father died, and my mother was, it was all hers to take care of then. In fact, before my father died, when he started to get sick, I started running around doing little stuff for him, trying to help him, maintain status quo. Yeah. And then after he died, then I realized that I had to help my mom take care of the stuff. So I just kind of got thrown into it. And it was easy for me because I actually working with him, I had, a lot of the stuff I had done. And when you're in electrical construction, you'll see a lot of construction. So, you know how stuff is supposed to be done. So you just kind of just get the right people to do it and get it taken care of.
Yeah, yeah. Just while we take a moment, let me just say that if you hear something that's resonating with you, please hit the like or subscribe button and share it with friends and family or other folks who you think might enjoy our content. Um, Greg, so you said you kind of watching your father and doing things with your father. So did you guys ever really talk about um, your assuming leadership in the family business or taking it over or inheriting it or money conversations, or was it like I often say sometimes in our community, that's grown folk business. They don't like to talk about it. And I know he was part of like my mom's generation, that silent generation. They didn't talk a lot about money and inheritance and generation plans and things like that. Did you guys ever have those conversations?
No, no, we never really sat down and just talked about, oh, this is going to be your job when I'm gone. This you're going to do this, this, and this. No, it's more like you have to learn it because you helped them do it.
Right.
And so it needs to be done, and you just realize that somebody's got to take responsibility for the stuff. So go ahead and, because I really had to help my mom out. My mother was coming down with Alzheimer's. I didn't realize it at the time, but I could understand she didn't really want to take responsibility for maintaining stuff. So, and I knew I could, so I just started helping her.
Right, yeah.
And eventually she told me, you just take care of it. And so that's what I did. I just took care of it for her. Yeah. And that was really important for me because it gave me a sense of pride trying to help her out.
Yeah.
And it, I don't know, I really just did it. I didn't do it for, I'm going to get this. It was more, I did it, like I said, because I just wanted to help my mom, and I took pride in helping her.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and it's like one of the things I think your family, growing up watching your family, your dad owned a business, your uncle owned a business, your relatives of yours I knew about because my granddad were in the real estate. They had real estate and they had farms. They had your cousin, he was a teacher but also had a business doing different things. So it seems like that's kind of part of your family legacy, right? It is. Intentional, unintentional, is just kind of the way in your DNA. Where do you think that part of your legacy comes from?
Well, I know it's not intentional. I'm saying that. I guess I had to define it, but it's just that, I've had, throughout my career, I've had a couple of small part-time jobs, and I've just always, been doing the electrical business. And I guess my uncles and my grandfather that had their own business, I guess that's just what they wanted to do. I'm beginning to think it's more in your DNA than anything else. Because my son has his own business. Never crossed my mind that's what he's doing, he would be doing.
Yeah.
But he decided he wanted to open his own business, and that's what he did.
Yeah.
So, like I said.
I mean, you mentioned that a lot of this is about how, I think you watched your father. And so you learned a lot of things that way, and it kind of became part of who you were. And I know watching your son grow up, watching Art, he saw a lot of the same things. I mean, he saw what you did, and I think one of the sayings that people use a lot of times, I know our pastor uses it, is that, men kind of do what their mothers tell them and what their fathers show them. They kind of emulate their fathers. So do you think that part of the legacy from your dad and in your family is just this, you saw the work ethic, or you saw the entrepreneurial part and it's just something you gravitated to?
I guess seeing is believing. That's all I can say. That's the only reason I can say is, that's what I saw him do. So I guess I assumed I would be doing the same thing. You get up, you get up and you go to work, because everybody that I know that has their own business has a work ethic, and you have to have that. You got to realize that you don't get off at 5 o'clock. You can't just walk away and go drink a beer. you probably gonna have a lot of days where you're gonna work a whole lot of hours.
So, if someone was inheriting a business that they had not been integrally involved in the day to day, how do you think that stacks up? Because I mean, you were there every day. You saw, you knew when payroll had to be paid. You knew supplies that need to be ordered. But if someone has not been as involved in the family business and then they all of a sudden inherit it, what do you think some of the challenges might be for somebody in that role?
First thing you got to decide is this what you really want to do? You know, are you committed to it? Because it's not going to be easy, especially if you have a learning curve you got to go through. Everybody has to go through a learning curve, and sometimes the learning curve you get thrown off the train.
Yeah.
So you got to decide if this is what I want to do, then I got to stick with it, and I got to figure it out one way or the other. You're gonna make mistakes, but you're gonna have to figure it out too. And if you got if you have a wife and you have kids, you can't make but so many mistakes, because those mistakes come all the way back to the feeding the family. And if you make too many of them, somebody's gonna get hungry.
Yeah.
So you're gonna have to decide, is this what I want to do? If it is, then you're just gonna have to jump in head first,
Right.
and be totally committed. And you're gonna have to do a lot of learning, on what you got to do, and since you weren't exposed to it, because I guess everybody in our family has been exposed to business and entrepreneurship for years, so it's not as hard.
Right. Yeah.
But if you haven't.
Yeah, I could see I mean, a little bit more of that. I mean, I think you could see if somebody was inheriting a business they hadn't been involved in, they're kind of a manager. Whereas in a service business like you've been in, and like you said, you grew up in it. So you grew up from sweeping the floors to, doing a bit of electrical stuff to at the end of the day where you know how to wire entire commercial buildings.
Yeah.
And certifications and whatever else you have to do. And did the management background and education help you to figure out you were going to kind of keep running the business like Dad ran it, or you were going to take it in a new direction once it was yours?
No, you're going to take it in a direction, if you're the only one that's, the day that my dad retired, he just walked out, he dropped the keys on the desk and walked out the door. He said, it's yours. Do what you want with it. If you got any questions, call me. Because he's not sitting in there in the office talking about, hey, what do you need? No, it's not. He just walked out the door. Kind of surprised me.
Yeah.
I'm walking there thinking I'm going to work today. No, you're going to have to figure it out. If that's the way, you're going to do it, you're going to take it in the direction that you want it to go.
Yeah.
And you're going to try to figure it out one way or the other. It was a slow start for me because when he retired, it's not like, people, I had a whole lot of clients lined up. I had to start lining up my own clients. I had to get the phone ringing, had a few service calls. That was one thing about, kind of falling into his business is I had service calls. So that was enough to keep you going. Mm-hmm. But if you really want to make some money, you're going to have to get some contracts. You're going to have to put some bids out. You're going to have to do some jobs with some size to them.
Right. And were those things you had to continue to learn, or those things you had learned watching him or through your education, or were some of these things where you had to kind of pick up the ball and figure it out for yourself?
Well, you're going to learn every day. It's always something new. It's different challenges. Everything from dealing with government regulations to, new innovations in the electrical business, stuff that people want to put in. But, biggest thing, that you have to learn in business is that you're not just knowing how to do the work and how to run a business are separate.
Okay.
They go together.
Okay.
But really, they're separate. Just because you're good at doing the work doesn't mean you're good at running the business.
All right. Yeah.
So you got to really decide which one you want to do. Either you want to get out here and become excellent worker or you want to become an excellent manager. You have to decide. And it's a very difficult decision, especially when you run a small business. One guy does it all. But as you grow, then you really got to start walking away from one or the other. Mm-hmm. And if whichever one you walk away, that if you got a bigger business, that means you got to hire somebody to do it because it still got to be done. Right. So if you're going to be a manager, be a manager. If you're going to be a great employee, be a great employee.
So you became management.
You become management because you have to. That's where you find out that's where the money is in management. Being a great employee, it pays well, but not as well as the manager. So once you decide, which one you want to do, then you can decide, if you become the manager and you're good at it, then, your growth potential is exponential.
Well, we're going to come back to like the management versus employee because it may. We'll talk about your son some and see how much full cycle you have come.
Okay.
But looking back, what do you think your as I say, Mr. Wimberley, what do you think your father passed down to you besides the business itself, and your mom too? I mean, our family has been interlinked for almost 100 years. But what are some of the other things that were passed down to you that you think back on?
I mean, there's a little bit of everything. Everything from how to, how you want to treat your kids and your family to, it's just everything. Because, as you grow up, you learn a lot of things from them, and you find out that you actually really treat your family the same way that your parents treated you. Mm-hmm. Some of the same things that they do, I do. It's like, my dad used to take me fishing. Okay, I took my son fishing. My dad never was a hunter, but, I started hunting, then I started taking my son hunting. But just about everything my parents did, I still do somewhat of. Yeah. And then I passed it down. But I think, the biggest gift is that, they took us on trips. Yeah. And I would always take my kids on trips and that just, I don't know, it's kind of the curiosity in me because I always think that, try everything at least one time. If you don't like it, don't do it again. Mm-hmm. But at least try it. And that's something that I've always wanted to make sure my kids tried everything. And that's why I think they do so many different things now, because at least try it.
Well, I know one of the things I would say is I'm a witness to the fact that you can inherit things from people who weren't your biological family or your parents or anything like that, because, my dad died when I was 5 years old. And so, your dad was always one of those men that I looked up to. Right? I'd come down, and we traveled together, our families traveled together, but, he was one of those folks in the neighborhood whose opinion I valued and who I looked at. My granddad, my uncle, your dad, there were a few men in the neighborhood in the area where I inherited from them kind of the how to be a man. Right, and how to treat your family and how to do things. Because I remember the laughter, I remember the fun, I remember the dinners, I remember the things like that. That despite being a business owner, it seemed like his reason for business was his family. Mm.
Yeah, well, that is the reason. Like I said, we're not doing it for free.
Another thing, people talk about inheriting assets, but they really talk about inheriting expectations. Like, what expectations do you think you feel you might have inherited from your family, from customers, from the community? Because Wimberley Electric, and it was a name, just like Irving Swain Press was a name in the community. There was value to that, but there were also expectations.
Yeah, well, those expectations were piled up on me because, as a youth, I used to do a lot of stuff I probably shouldn't have done. And so everybody's expectations for me, like, he's not gonna make it. You know, he's too crazy, he's too wild, he does stuff all the time he shouldn't be doing. And so when I left home going to college, you know, my main goal was to make sure that, you know, tell everybody I can make it. You know, this is, you know, what I did as a, you know, in my youth, that's over and done with. I can do anything I decide I want to do now. I can set my mind on and do it.
When I was a child, I spoke as a child.
Yeah.
When
I went to college, they said he ain't gonna last. I said, I made sure I got out of college in 4 years, just to show everybody I could do it if I wanted to. Right. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't want to, so now I do. So, and that was the same thing when you start, you know, inheriting stuff from your family. You see how many other families that had inheritance and left to the families, and it doesn't exist anymore. Yeah, you know, I could name you several families that, you know, rags to riches, or no, the other way around.
Riches to rags.
Riches to rags.
Yeah. I mean, that's a big thing with inheritance of people who are, you know, because I've all, you know, one of the reasons I'm passionate about this is I always like to say now inheritance has to come with instructions. Right, that we don't have the conversations around the dinner table, the family boardroom table. We don't have a family succession plan. Yeah, you have them in business, but we don't have them in families. And so, what happens to the legacy that people create and spend a lot of hard blood, sweat, and tears doing it, and then all of a sudden we're handing it over, and we haven't prepared people to receive it.
That's the biggest thing. If they're not prepared to receive it, just like winning the lottery, it's gone. Yeah. You know, it will before you know it.
Well, I mean, when we talk about it, we talk about that, and so a lot of people, I think, feel the weight of it when they receive it. So was there ever a moment when you received it and it just felt overwhelming? You know, and you felt like, you know, am I carrying on my family legacy properly, or were there other feelings that you put on yourself that necessarily weren't other people putting on you?
Yeah, well, I think it was, for me, it wasn't like it just got dumped on me. Because due to, you know, like I said, when my father died, that put a lot of responsibility on me. I kind of got a chance to test ride it with taking care of my mother. You know, and you know, my mother was good, but like I say, Alzheimer's started to creep up on her, and the more it creeped up on her, the more responsibility it put on me. So gradually, you know, we got to the point that I had to take over everything, and I had to make sure she was okay, also.
So you kind of inherited the responsibility before you inherited the property and the business, technically. Yeah, you were already having to do those things.
Yeah, I was already doing it, you know, before my mother passed. So, so like I said, it's not like it was just dumped on me. You know, I was doing a lot of stuff for my mom before, you know, before she passed. And you know, I kind of pat myself on the back because I mean, I did a lot of stuff for her. I actually made a lot of money before she passed away.
Right. Yeah. So if you're talking to folks or you're trying to, you know, what's one of the things maybe you would think about you had been told before taking over the business? Or what's something you wish you had learned, or looking back if you were kind of saying it to somebody, or maybe you told it to Art when he was starting a new business, but what's one of the things you think, you know, aha moment that you might have had after you took the business over and said, I wish I had have known?
I can tell you what I told Art, which is, like, we're going back to the management or worker. You got to decide what you're going to do. And something that has really stuck with Art, because he repeats it back to me for word, is that, you know, if you have to ride around with your tool belt on, you can't be a manager. A manager can't do both. So either decide which one you want to do. Because I told him some of the best contractors I ever worked for rode around in a Prius. You can't put nothing in it but a briefcase. That's all you need to work with is a briefcase. Pencil, pad, and a phone. That's all you need to be a manager. Yeah. Now, if you're going to ride around in a truck full of tools, that's a whole different category. But once you start picking up the tools, then you don't have time to manage. And so you got, and it's made a big difference.
So is that the same thing you would tell your younger self if you had to? Like if you could go back and tell your younger self before you inherited the business or before you took it over, is that the same thing you'd say, or is there anything else?
Yeah, I would tell my younger self that. Because I had to learn that the hard way. Trying to do both, juggling stuff. And when you start trying to do both and you juggle stuff, certain things get left out or don't get done.
Yeah.
So once that starts happening, then you can, you start to, certain failings that will start to happen when things don't get done.
Right.
So, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would do it a little differently than I did.
So let me go this way then. So your son, we talked about, followed a similar path and became a contractor. And so how does that feel as a father when we talk about generational legacies or entrepreneurship? How does that make you feel?
It's great. I love it. I mean, it just makes me feel really good that, he's able to make it on his own. And he doesn't have to work for anybody else. And he can set his own schedules and do what he wants to do. If he wants to be good, he can be good. If he doesn't, he doesn't have to. So,
did you think you intentionally passed something down to him that kind of guided him in that direction, or did it just kind of naturally grow into that's what he wanted to do?
And for him, it kind of naturally grew into it. I didn't, like I tell everybody, the light bulb didn't, when he got out of college, we were trying to encourage him to get a job, and he did. That didn't work so well. So I said, well, if that's not working well, why don't I encouraged him to come work for me, and then maybe he could get into the electrical business and start doing that. But he told me before he started, he didn't want to be in the electrical business. I said, okay. But he still come to work. So he did. And he worked for me for about a year until things, we saw some opportunities for him to get into being a contractor. Because I had some other contractors that needed help, and they needed some license help. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, you can do this. You just got out of school. Shouldn't be any problem for you to study and get a contractor's license and help them out. And so that's what he started out. But then after he got his license, he realized, hey, I can do this myself. Mm-hmm. And that's what it took off for him.
That's right. And, what do you, when you think about your children, right? You think about, I know you've been very intentional about your business and the things you're doing. And yeah, when you think about the kind of things you want to pass down to your children, how do you think about it? Do you talk to them about it? Do you have conversations with them about it? Your son is a business owner, your daughter's, finance and business and other things. So they're very, well educated. They've been around you their whole lives, working in the business and understanding what you do. But are you intentional? Are you intentional about your conversations with them about, their futures, your future, their legacy?
Well, I try to let them make their own decisions about what they want to do. I don't, like I said, after I get you up through college and, I give you some advice here and there, but, which direction you want to go is really up to you. And I tell them to go ahead and do that. And then, and as far as if whatever they want to do, I'll help them. But I'm not saying, I don't give directions as you need to do this and you need to do that. You need to follow what you want to do, because it's all about being happy about what you're doing. Nobody works at anything that they don't want to do. and you got to want to do what you want, in order to succeed. So,
What kind of conversations do you guys have about business, about the business world, about assets, about, I know you've done some stock trading, about different things and retirement and the future. What kind of conversations what was the money mindset kind of growing up? How much did you expose your kids to the reality of, entrepreneurship, small business, then you're looking into stock market and other things. What did you try and expose your kids to, and what are your conversations like today around assets and money and planning?
well, my kids probably started learning about the stock market and stuff like that because I had their college funds in there. You have 529 plans and other plans that you have set aside for them to go to school with. So, when we start talking about going to college, this is where your money's coming from to go to college with. And the rest of it, I'll figure out a way to get it. What's not there, we'll get it all together for you. And then after they got out of college, they would ask me, well, where do you put your money? So, I gave them the name of my stockbroker. And in fact, both of them have accounts with my stockbroker. And so, we talk about how to make money. And, at their age, they can be very aggressive with stuff. But, as my son started accumulating money, I was like, you need to go buy a house. You keep paying rent. It's time for you to go buy a house. And I think he really didn't want to part with his money that he had saved up. But you can make so much more money investing it than you can have it sitting in a savings account.
That's right, yeah.
And buying a house is like your very basic first investment. And it's paid off for him. I mean, it's, the market around here is acting real crazy. I think it's kind of slowed down now, but at one point, it was climbing exponentially. Yeah. And I tell him, if you're not in the game, you can't play. Yeah. So keep sitting on the sidelines and the game will pass you by. So you got to get out there in it. Yeah. And if you're gonna make some money in it, and once you're out there in it, you realize, hey, this is what I need to do to make more money. You only have two hands, so if you got somebody else working to make money for you, cuts down on the amount of work you have to do.
Yeah. And so one of the things, when you think about, it seems like those life lessons you've given them are already paying dividends. But when we start talking about, and we've both seen, friends, colleagues, other people go through inheritances, and when we start thinking about what heirs should know before they inherit anything, right? What are some of the things you think, whether it's a business or a house or even just a family tradition? What do you think in general, as a society, as a community, as in our community specifically, what should we be trying to teach heirs before they run into that journey of inheritance?
Well, even they need to know the importance of succeeding. Failure is not an option. You can't let down your whole family. You got to figure out a way to make this work. And so I just, you just hoping that they get the point. So it's, if you want your heirs to succeed, you have to prepare the way for them. Mm-hmm. You have to give them some idea of which way to go. Because if you just drop it in their lap, they're gonna, as anybody else would, have problems with it. Mm-hmm. You got to start talking to them about how to make money, different ways to make money. Even if you're just working a job, what do you have to do at your job to succeed and get ahead? How do you move up to the next level? You can't just go to work and then come home and go to sleep. You got to go figure out a way how I can move up, how I can make more money. And I still have those conversations with my daughter every day about her job. What do you got to do to move up? And sometimes it's time, sometimes it takes a lot of work, but
Yeah.
it can be done.
Yeah. No, it definitely can be done. Well, I appreciate it, man. I really appreciate your sitting down with us and talking through these things. And you and I have had these conversations. And before we go, I want to ask kind of one bigger, broader question. So, when you think about the Wimberley people's legacy, right? And you look forward, because now you're a granddaddy. You have a whole nother generation starting out and coming up and being trained in the way of the Wimberley. And so when you think about the Wimberley legacy, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 years from now, what do you want it to be? What do you think about when you say, when you look forward into the future, what's the Wimberley legacy?
Yeah, I just want to say, hey, every generation is another stepping stone. You just step on on the way up, because as a family, as we work together, you can get ahead a lot easier than everybody working separately. And I'm hoping that that a lot of people will understand that from here on out, that's the way generational wealth works. You just got to keep passing it down.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping that's what will happen with my family. They'll just keep passing it down, and they'll look at the steps that my grandfather did and my father did, I'm doing, my son is doing, my daughter's doing, and grandkids, and just keep on going.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it's you and I come from what we call good stock. We come from people who have built something, right? Whether it's through property or through business or at the churches they belong to or in the community. In addition to their business acumen and to their wealth creation, they gave us a name that we're proud of in a community that knew that name, and so we felt like it was our job to continue to hold up that banner, and you certainly have done so, and I think that's how we've talked about our children's children and what we can do for them. So I appreciate your coming to sit down on Inheritance to Income podcast, and so again, if you've seen something here today or heard something today that you resonates with you, please hit that like and subscribe button. We'll have more episodes coming to talk about the different facets of inheritance, what it means, and how you deal with it, how you prepare for it on the journey, and how you deal with it once it's here. So I really appreciate the time that you've granted us today to hear some of Greg's story. I hope some of it is applicable in your journey, and I hope you'll join us again on Inheritance to Income. Peace and blessings.